Thank you for joining us for another For Investors by Investors Long Beach-Cerritos podcast. As always, we're proud to be your all-education real estate resource without any kind of sales pitch. If you'd like to attend one of our meetings in person, we meet on the last Thursday of each month at the Cerritos Library in Cerritos, California. You can RSVP at meetup.com/for investors by investors. To find more investment resources such as blogs and podcasts and content from other FIBI groups, go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com and search our entire library. Now on to the podcast.
Well, thank you guys very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Who's here for their first time? Good. Well, first of all, well, yeah, everyone's here to this place for the first time in this room. So, for those of you guys who don't know, For Investors by Investors was started by a couple of full-time investors that were tired of going to different real estate investment clubs and getting a sales pitch every time with the boot camps and the book and tape sets and all that kind of stuff. And so, For Investors by Investors was born out of that, where we started to have multiple chapters, but we don't actually go through and sell anything at our events. So there's no upsells or anything like that. We strictly do this for education and the networking because we don't make any money at these events. We basically either break even or lose because our whole goal is just the relationships and the people in the room and finding ways to help each other out in real estate, because that's really what this whole thing is about. So all the different chapter leaders associated with this, associated with FIBI, we have one in Pasadena, Orange County, we're opening one in Culver City now. I run this one, and then as well as the one in Manhattan Beach. We have a couple of dormant ones right now with some of the founders, just because they have kids and are working full-time as real estate investors right now. So, but we have about 25,000 members now, and at any of our clubs, if you find us, you can go to meetup.com and find and type in FIBI or For Investors by Investors, and you'll find all of our chapters if you take off the distance. Or you can go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com as well and check us out there for our different chapters throughout Southern California. And all of them are, like I said, are the same with that whole no sales pitch atmosphere behind it. So that being said, just as you guys know, this is the first time at this event, so if you guys can tell everybody in the community or have influences, I'd love to talk with you about that, just because we're starting to expand in this area. I like this much better than Long Beach just because of the more centralized location, less freeways, try to take side streets if you can, an LA type deal, right? So, and then we just recently brought on time a few months ago with regard to come help with the FIBI, with FIBI Long Beach, and he comes to us with a ton of experience in real estate, works a lot with international clients, and has been a realtor for years now and has been killing it. So he's one of the people that operates at this type of level, at a very high level, and that's why I was like, hey dude, you gotta come in here and help us out here with that knowledge base. So that being said, tonight it's all about asset protection, and so we have a couple of people here that I want you guys to meet that I think will help you guys substantially. I use both of them substantially for my own real estate practice, and I think they're ridiculous team members to have on your team as far as that right knowledge base about the right structuring components of this, because real estate investing in general is great, but if you don't structure yourself correctly, you're going to take a hit at some point. You're going to have that falter where someone steals from you, or it's done incorrectly, or you get sued the wrong way, or not protected, or there's a claim that happens. So say again. Is there a right way to get sued? There is a right way to get sued, for sure. To be protected in the first place, and then it doesn't. Well, then you just pay them off to But so you pull a shack and be like, here, go away. So, but anyway, so that being said, we have Peter here. Peter, can you start off and just kind of give us a little bit about your experience and your background and what you do for a living, man?
Sure. I am a transactional real estate attorney in Century City. I do a little corporate as well, a lot of the cross section. So I help my clients with a lot of private placements, capital raising, syndications, acquisitions, divestitures, structuring, as a background in, as I said, corporate, so forming entities, doing a lot of joint ventures. Actually, I've invested with Matt and others, so I know what it's like to put on an investor hat and look for sponsors, and very
Mr. Baptist.
You get gray hair, you get called Mr. and Sir a lot, So it makes you feel like you're every one of these, So he calls me Sir now, My name's Ed. I work with insurance on fix and flips, on vacant property, rehabs all over the country. We also insure non-performing notes for any of you who are thinking about exploring that avenue or who have notes. Because if your borrower is not paying you, the chances are he's not paying his insurance as well. We insure foreclosures, REO property, again, all over the country. And it doesn't matter if it's vacant or occupied. It's something that my agency, Pennsylvania agency, has been doing for about 32, 33 years now.
And when it comes to mitigating your risk associated with an investment on the insurance side, Ed has specialty programs he set up for us with this stuff for our flips and holds. It's amazing, some of the strategies, and really understanding the types of insurance is really important to know what you're getting in the first place and some of the exclusions. Rick, can you give us a little background on yourself as far as like what you focus on now, what you're specializing in, and what areas and things like that?
Well, of course. I'm the Brett inside from KW Realty, and I've been in the real estate mortgage business for about 12 years now. I went from selling one house in my first year to now over 60 houses a year. And I found a lot of investors don't know that they do need insurance during the flipping process. So, I mean, a lot of things can happen. Last year, December 31st, it was windy, raining hard, the tree fell on the house. And that cost $50,000 to repair that. And with the right insurance, then it's always happy.
He would have made me cut that tree down first. I think I think close to the house.
Right. But anyway, even the rent is covered.
Right.
Yeah. Even the rent is covered for the period that it's vacant. So I think I believe insurance is the best asset protection. Yeah. But that's up to you guys.
For 4.5 years.
I think it's important to definitely understand the types of investments and what you're doing each time, to understand the risks with what you're doing in each individual instance when it comes to real estate. If you're just buying and holding, you're not doing construction, there might not be as much risk as construction, dealing with contractors and all that kind of stuff. So having the right insurance in place is key. But I'm sure Peter will tell you that every single time it's important to get an LLC or an entity in place, right, Peter? Every time, no matter what?
No way.
There you go.
My famous line is, I'm sure you'll hear, it depends.
Every attorney on the planet that's a good attorney will say that to you. It's not what you want to hear, but it's exactly the truth. So, to give you guys a little background, I'm a CPA and a full-time investor. I flip about 5 to 10 houses a month. We've been doing it for 10 years. We've flipped over 700 houses. I own a management company, a renovation company out in Memphis, Tennessee. We do lending across the nation with different flippers. And then we do a lot of value-add multifamilies. We have a short-term rental business, and then run FIBI, which is our nonprofit organization that teaches the financial education and stuff, so, and the real estate education. But like I tell every time, which you'll get tired of the joke, but it's much better than working at a CPA firm doing tax and audit and banging my head against a computer.
Except for you 8 accountants in the room,
Yeah, you're
excluded from that
You
comment.
guys all get CPE for this, by the way. So, but anyway, well, thank you guys again. I want to keep in mind that this is going to be a Q&A, so you guys feel free to ask those questions that you're not sure of. This is really for you. Our whole goal here is to try to provide as much value as we can for you guys, and it's going to be streamed on Facebook. So if you guys have those questions later, then go back and go take a look at it, or like us on For Investors by Investors Facebook page, and I'm sure that realize too that we are not attorneys up here, so you can't sue us for anything that we say, except for Peter. He's got really good insurance in place, and I'm sure Ed doesn't place that type of insurance.
No, because that insurance pays.
Yeah.
I represent the other stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So that being said, what I really want to start on is talking about the entity structuring and the insurance protections that go into the different types of properties and investments that you're investing in. And so I want to start with the legal structuring component of this. And Peter, what do you think are kind of some of the key factors that go into deciding whether you are going to open an entity or not, or get really good insurance instead, or what makes you want to get that entity protection in the first place if I'm an investor?
Well, the most important thing about having an entity is liability protection. If you own something in your own name, then all of your assets you get sued, all of your personal assets are exposed. So if you own something in an entity and you have your own bank accounts for that entity and you keep it separate from your personal assets, then anything that happens will stop with that entity. So that's sort of the main key reason to have an entity. Some attorneys will tell you, oh, you're buying property, just form an LLC. Oh, you need a manager, you don't want to manage it yourself. And again, it totally depends on your situation. Depends on how much value you have inside that LLC. It's also about it's about protecting what's inside the LLC, but again, it's about protecting what's outside the LLC. So if you buy, a house in Memphis and it's worth $50,000, maybe it's not worth having an LLC and then a separate LLC for a manager. Maybe if you have 6 or 10 of those, maybe it is. It also depends if you have a really crazy offshore asset protection scheme and you have no personal assets. It's not, so there's a lot of different factors that would go into it for each person, and there's really, no one answer.
I think what you're saying is key as far as how much equity you have in that deal in particular, right? Like a lot of, you hear people saying a lot of, hey, go form like an entity for every property you own. Now, you know how costly that is, right? Especially in California. And but so if you go through and you're able to structure it where you're saying, hey, this house has 50 grand in equity, this one has equity, this one has equity, but they're not substantial, maybe you go put it into one LLC and get proper insurance in place, to protect you with an umbrella or something like that instead, right? So to have that extra protection, because it's a matter of how much are you trying to protect, right? How much do you own personally you're trying to protect? And can they garnish wages and things like that as well, right? Because there's another risk too. If it's long-term big liability, can they go after you personally in your wages too long-term? So these are all things you're looking to try to protect, right? So it depends on your individual situation. Now, Ed, what do you think some of the main things, when we talk about I think the first layer of protection is doing business right. The second layer of protection is your insurance. And the third layer of protection, I think, is the entity piece associated with it. Am I wrong, or are you going to throw the entity in front, hopefully? So.
Adrian, what's your question?
Yeah.
Just a question for Ed regarding formation of the series LLC. So, in what step would you, I know you have to form one out of state. California doesn't allow you to form a series LLC, is that correct?
California does not have series LLCs.
Okay, so if you were to invest out of the state, let's say Florida, for instance, and you construct a series LLC, would you then be able to bring that series LLC and have protection for properties in California under that out-of-state series LLC?
Well, the first question is, why would you form a series LLC?
Then you don't have to file multiple tax returns.
Okay, but you're talking about a property in Florida, right?
Yeah.
So anywhere you are with an entity, you'll have protection. So you don't need to bring that entity into California. Now, if you are actively managing it from California, you're doing business in California, that entity may have to qualify in California. Depends, again, on where you are, what you're doing. If you're bringing in money, you may want to form that entity in Delaware first, because of the laws in Delaware that are more favorable to managers. So if you're dealing with third-party money, that's another topic we can get into, and then qualify in Florida. But if you have a property in Florida, you may not even need to qualify in California.
And that's the thing too. I mean, he's talking about securities laws when forming it in Delaware. If you're having pooling investors' capital together, you typically are selling a security, right? So you have to go through and a lot of times form it in Delaware because of the securities laws and the disclosure rules and things like that associated with it, right? And so looking at it from that perspective. You want to be able to go through and have that right protection, but at the same time, realize that if you live here in California, they're going to require you to register any entity that's a foreign state entity here in California. And if you don't, they're going to see it on your tax return, and they're going to be like, "Hey, where's my 800?" If you have one for every series that you have, if you live here and have a series LLC out of state, they want the 800 for every single one of those. It doesn't matter if it's a series or not. You know what I mean? So if you own that and they say you manage it from here, they're going to be like, "Give me my money." There's been court cases on this because they're broke, right? So.
But maybe you have a property manager in Florida, maybe you can, I mean, you know, there are ways.
Structure the management there or something like that to say you don't manage it, but yeah, it's gotta be passive for you if you're here, you know, so California will get you.
What is a series LLC?
A series LLC is basically form one entity, and you can kind of have, like, think of it as like a book, and you have chapters. So instead of actually going off and forming multiple entities, you can form the book, and then you have sort of chapters within that book, and they're just individual, like, they're not technically separate legal entities, but you have separate, like, dividing walls within one entity.
So it gives you some protection in between.
Certain states allow you to do it. It is a bit less expensive. Yeah, you have another question?
No, it was kind of
Sure.
similar. So if I have properties in Houston, Texas, and the way I originally formed them was Texas LLC holding the properties.
Yep.
That LLC is, I'm only a member. They're managed by the LLC Wyoming. So the Wyoming LLC is the manager of the Texas LLC. I'm the
Okay.
manager of the Wyoming LLC.
Who told you to do that?
What people who set it up. So my question is,
I mean-
but the purpose of
Yeah.
the purpose of why, right?
Yeah.
Is because, so I don't have to pay $800 in California for the Texas one. I only pay $800 for the Wyoming one only, because it's like under it.
Oh, my bad.
So why wouldn't you have formed that one in California?
Which one?
The Wyoming one?
For protection purposes, because I read that Wyoming and Nevada have better asset protection laws.
Well, but you have to bring it into California anyway, right?
Well, Wyoming one is called in California.
Okay, so it's registered
The
here.
Wyoming one
It's
is
to
called,
the-
the Wyoming one was called in Wyoming, it's called, but it's
Right.
registered in California.
And you would have to register it here.
Because it is here, but the Texas one is not.
Oh, no, understood, because that just holds the property, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's managed by the Wyoming.
Right.
But I, so the purpose of that was, they said, what if you get another property in Tennessee, what if you get property in Missouri, what if you get property, whatever? All of them would go under the Wyoming one, like as a manager.
If you manage it through the same one. Yeah, I mean, if all that entity is doing is holding a property, I think, you know, and I'm not a CPA, but I think you can fairly say it's not doing business in California.
So I was told that, so that way I only paid $50 one time,
Yeah.
not for the 4 other ones.
Keep in mind though too, like, for example, like I have a California S Corp and California LLC, that when I buy property in another state, I just register in that state specifically because I live here, right? I just immediately register there. That's a protection thing, is, you know, I'm unaware of that specific piece
Well,
of real estate. So.
I'm my
That's cool,
CPA, though, my CPA,
Okay,
everybody knows who she is. She said, no, that's not really legitimately the right way to do it. That I should actually register the Texas LLC in California. If I get an LLC in Indiana, I should register that one in California.
you know, I don't know if that's the case. I mean,
Like technically,
I flip houses now instead of do taxes, so, but at the same, but the same is much more lucrative than doing taxes. But, no, but in reality, if it's all about who's managing it. So if you have another outside manager in Wyoming, and that Wyoming LLC, you're actually passive on, you know, and he's doing all the work, or that other outside person, you shouldn't have to register here because the only reason they want you to register here is because you are managing it from here. So that's why they want their 800. But, you know, there's been court cases like this, and, you know, I'm sure the CPA has other, you know, rulings and things like that that you can go by, and I would ask for those rulings too, you know, so.
because the Wyoming LLC is managed by me.
Okay.
It makes
So,
no money. It makes no
yeah, if it's
money.
managed by you, then.
It makes no money.
I don't know, like I have to look at the court rulings on that one, that's a tough one, you know, so. You would have to have it managed by something else and not have to register here, you know.
Well,
like
the
something
bottom
else.
line isn't it, I'm sorry. The bottom line is it's just that California does want you to register anything you have.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean-
of course they do.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily have to, you do it directly, right?
Right.
Question, because you brought the S corp. I always have that question. If you have an S corp, it only LLCs. Do you have to register those LLCs with the state too, because an S corp owns it? So they say you have multifamily in different states, you have LLCs in those states, but your S corp owns those LLCs, which is legal in most states. Would it still just be, you don't have to do that, it's just,
I don't-
ask for the corporation tax?
They may say, I don't think so, because they're gonna say your S corporation is managing it from California.
Right, but you shouldn't have to pay the LLC tax because of the fact that you're already.
Oh, that-
Shouldn't is a whole other word. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, they're gonna say, you're managing the S corp's here, that S corp is managing those, so those you need to register here too, is probably what the stance they'll take. I'd have to look up the case law, but yeah, I mean, that seems about right to me, so.
Wants their money.
Yeah, exactly, so, well, thank you guys. Any other questions initially on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, just one more, man, it seems like California comes up a lot, but if you were living in Arizona, would we be having this discussion about, as much about not worried about California, or would we be worried about Arizona at that point? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
would be the same
if
thing?
you lived in Arizona, then you'd have to check and see whether you'd have to qualify in Arizona. But most other states are not as aggressive, let's say, as California. I mean, I don't know Arizona law, but I would think if you are actively doing business in Arizona and, managing properties in other states, you probably qualify that management entity in Arizona. But it does vary by state. It's just, but California wants everybody's money from everybody, as a general rule.
Question.
So with regards to wholesaling, do you present offers with an LLC or an S corp when you're engaging in double S?
It doesn't matter. So it matters if you become a dealer, okay? If you're flipping a property, one house or a couple houses for tax purposes, you're not necessarily considered a dealer. It's considered short-term capital gains, which is taxed at your ordinary income tax rates. But there's no payroll taxes associated with it. If you do multiple a year, it becomes your primary income source, like I do.
Like
then-
inventory?
Yeah, it's like inventory to me. Like every house is inventory to me. So in that case, you're basically, you're active, you're having active income, and so you have payroll taxes associated with it. So if you did it in your own name or an LLC, you're paying 15% on all of their net income. If you do it in an S corp, you do what's called a salary dividend split, and you get 66% of it is dividends and 33% is salary, and you only get taxed the 15% payroll taxes on the 33%. But there's a limitation. You can't go through and say, hey, I made 20 grand this year. I don't want to go through, like, I'm going to go and do 33% of it as payroll, and that's it, right? They want you to have a required minimum salary. So you made 20 grand, and you normally you're a stockbroker and you make, 800,000 a year, or the average is 100, they're going to be like, well, 100% of that 20,000 needs to be payroll now. So the S corp didn't give you any benefit really, based on your net income. So once your net income reaches over $40,000 a year on average, then the math starts to make sense to set up the cost of the entity and all that kind of stuff versus the tax savings on the self-employment tax. So once you start, individual name or LLC, until you start making over $40,000 a year, then you can go through and do that. Now, the LLC is more for asset protection than for tax purposes, right? So for the tax purpose piece, the only purpose for the entity is the salary dividend split associated with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just regarding assigning the contract to an end client. So just wrapping the property, it's the same process.
Same process either way. You're just having a different name in the entity.
And then also, I know there's some people that they'll pay them $0, take a $0 salary. Is that illegal for them to just put it? So they try to deter being taxed by not paying themselves a salary.
So the S corp will flow through to your personal return whether you take the money out or not, or you pay yourself a salary or not. It's going to flow. It's a flow through entity. Same thing with the LLC. It's going to flow through. So paying yourself a salary, technically, they want you to pay a salary on a quarterly basis based on what your projected net income is. Otherwise, you're going to get audited at the end of the year when you try to do it once a year, So there's specifics with regard to that I think is important. So, and this all has to do with legal structuring for asset protection, but the tax side is a giant part of that too, you know what I mean? So, but I really want to start focusing as well on the asset protection piece too. But yeah, you're absolutely right. For flips, where you're a dealer like that, an S corp is usually the better play. When it's a rental property, an LLC or your own name, if you don't think an LLC is worth it enough, is usually the better play because you're not dealing with, payroll taxes associated with rental income, Interest income, I don't see a whole lot of liability unless you're dealing with homeowners and things like that, then you better put it in an entity. But Ed actually has a ton of experience with that stuff because he insures all the non-performing debt. So he sees all the people that are going into foreclosure and all the issues that happen with that. And he has to force place that insurance to make sure that lender is protected. So something to understand, everybody thinks property, like you're getting insurance for the purpose of owning a house, but you may want to get insurance if you're a lender, or you do want to get insurance if you're a lender, because you want to make sure that you're protected and you're put as the loss paid on that policy. And so all these lenders go to Ed when they're like, hey, these people are not paying, we don't know if they're paying, they're definitely not paying their insurance, let's go force place that insurance because they're not doing anything to this property, you know what I mean? So it's really interesting. Ed, can you talk about, some of the things you taught me with regard to the importance of the provisions inside of an insurance policy, to me, are the key to all of the asset protection. Can you kind of talk about, from, like, say, a rental property perspective, some of the most important aspects of a typical insurance policy and some of the things that the others do that you don't think protect people well enough?
It's let me just get a sense. Does anybody own, let's be honest, who owns rental property in the room? So I don't want to go off on too many crazy tangents. Are they single families? Are they single families? So, single family rental, I'm gonna start kind of like at the bottom of the pyramid with information, and then I'm gonna get a little more complicated with some of the things I'm going to say. But any policy, you start with the exclusions. We all read the coverage and we fall asleep. It's just that's insurance, right? If I want to go to sleep, I read a competitor's policy. It takes me about a page and a half, I'm out the lane. Legal document if I want to really have a good nap. Insurance is just boring. It is just boring. And in insurance, it's crazy because we give it in paragraph 1, but we take it away in paragraph 18. We give you an endorsement to give it back to you, and then we give you an exclusion on the back page of the policy that takes it back all over again, purposely so you don't have a clue as to what you got. So that's insurance, right? It's a pain in the ass. We are the pimple on the elephant's back. It's about the house, it's about the car, it's about the rental property. It's never about the insurance policy until there's a claim. Then it's all about the insurance policy. And then we're awake, because now we got to read it. And we got to say, am I covered? And I'm as guilty as everybody else. I can't tell you the last time I read my own homeowner's policy. And I read the thought of even looking at it. I just hope it says what I thought it was when I first bought it. I never want to see it again. It's in a drawer somewhere, and I'm an insurance guy, and I know which drawer it's in. That I can tell you. I just don't want to look at it. Let's hope the good hands people truly are good hands people. But rental property is a different beast. You have to pay attention to liability coverage. So I'm going to break it down where we have the house for damages, fire, wind, hail, lightning, smoke, riot, aircraft and vehicular that slams into the property. These are all major perils that are covered that make up the definition of, you may hear special form, you may hear replacement cost, you may hear all risk. Those perils speak to that. And why is that important? It's because lenders will not loan you on your rental property unless you have replacement costs, all risk coverage. If you're a cash buyer, you can pick and choose. If you want to have what we call actual cash value, which means I'm going to take that house and think of it like the car commercial. I got in a car accident and only got 3 tires. When I filed my claim, I can't drive on 3 tires. Actual cash value means they go to the house, they look at how old it is, and they depreciate it. And then they say, here's your money. And you look up and you say, I had a kitchen fire, yeah, the house is 60 years old, I got this actual cash value policy because the premium was like 1/3 what a replacement cost was, and the next thing you know, after the deductible, you got a check for $1,400 and your kitchen fire cost you $18,000 and you're SOL.
let's say your stuff is older and you don't get value for that, then.
Yeah, if you have, like I say, a 40-year-old house, they usually use 70 years as a lifespan of a house, unless you can show that you did your improvements and you did your modifications, which of course then theoretically is permitted with the city, so you have records to say, no, the house has been updated, its life is much newer than a 70-year-old property, assuming you bought a house, let's say, in 1950, if I'm doing my math right. So you have to look at what kind of policy you have. So now we're going to assume that you have replacement cost coverage. And there is a problem to the house. They are going to give you the amount less depreciation to fix it unless you actually fix it. So why is that relevant? Why am I not even going there? In the subprime crisis, which wasn't that long ago, when people were upside down in their houses, give me my actual cash value settlement, I'm walking. I'm taking my money and I'm leaving. So insurance companies would pay actual cash value and they wouldn't have to pay replacement costs because people weren't rebuilding because they were upside down in the house and they were walking. They were going to Arizona or Nevada or wherever else they went. They were leaving California. So we have replacement cost to the structure, and on rental property we have a component called loss of rents. And again, this is mainly almost mandatory by lenders who say if something happens to that property and the tenant is forced to relocate, we want to know you can still make your payments to me. So we are going to mandate that you have 6 months or 12 months loss of rents. So that, again, if your tenant has to leave, you get that payment until the house is ready for a tenant to move into it. Once that house is ready to be moved into again, that benefit ceases, whether you have it rented or not. But you at least have that income stream coming in while the house is under repair. The third component, and this is the one that gets gray and ambiguous and ugly, and Peter is probably much more averse than I am, but I know what my policies cover, and that's liability. You know, the most obvious one. Someone drives up to the property, gets out of their car, parks in the driveway, trips on the driveway crack, goes down, breaks their knee or their hip, and, you know, this is California, we're sue crazy here. I'm gonna sue.
All the benefits with California, right?
And so, even if they sue on little Johnny's truck that's in the driveway that has nothing to do with anything, they are gonna sue because they got a broken leg. And why are they going to sue? Because they want money. And who are they going to sue? Not the tenant. The tenant doesn't have any money, they're renting. And I'm broad brushing here, so I don't mean to insult any renters in the room. But property owners are generally your deeper pocket. So they're going to go after the property owner, even though it was little Johnny's tractor that was in the driveway. And I tripped on it, I hit my head, and the sprinkler was 2 inches higher than it should have been. And the next thing you know is Matt's got a ton of money because he does 700 of these things. I don't care who Matt's renting to. I want Matt's money. So that's California. So we offer $1 million per property with a $2 million aggregate. Aggregate means the total out we will pay out in any one given year. And when I say we, I'm talking about the insurance industry as a whole. So when Matt gets sued, he gets up to $1 million of coverage for that particular occurrence, and that's the buzzword. It's $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. Aggregate again being the most an insurance company will pay in any given year. And who requires that? The lenders, because they want Matt to survive any litigation so that he can keep making his payment on his properties. So you will see $1 million occurrence, $2 million aggregate, pretty common on any rental property insurance coverage. So those are your building blocks: the replacement costs for the property, the loss of rents, and then the liability. And liability claims are messy because if they're big, insurance companies don't want to pay. I don't want to nauseate anybody with the tragedies, but we all heard about what happened in Berkeley with the balcony collapsing. And for those who may recall, and unfortunately a couple people died in that one, and they're going back against the builder, the owner of the units. And this is a multifamily, so it doesn't speak necessarily to residential, but where I'm going with the example is If something bad happens with liability, it's usually big bucks. You're not normally talking nickel and dime stuff, unless perhaps it's a dog bite type of situation. So you do have situations where people don't sue, and they will get their medical payments, and there will be some benefits as part of the liability policy. We also have a random provision where if your house catches fire and burns the neighbors, there's what we call a $50,000 liability policy for fire damage, not to be confused with your replacement cost. It just means the fire at your house burned your neighbor's house down and they're pissed. Okay, well, here's 50,000, go away, or at least here's a head start. Neighbor's going to file their claim with their own insurance company anyhow. So liability is really designed to protect you if someone gets hurt on your property. There's also another provision in liability policies that's very relevant, and that's personal advertising. Well, people say personal advertising is slander. You know, what are you talking about? You beat me up on Facebook, you know, or something of that nature. Wrongful eviction falls under personal advertising. So if you were sued as a landlord for wrongful eviction, you actually have coverage under your liability policy that's part of the personal advertising language. So it's one more benefit that you have in your liability policies.
Can you just, one of the biggest things that I think is super important to understand that, you know, obviously not all insurance companies are equal, but can you talk about some of the key exclusions in some of these policies? Like you bring up dog bites, right? I mean, from my understanding, most insurance companies exclude dog bite coverage because they get sued from it, right? So, or they have claims, I mean, from it. So, but what's your thoughts as far as what are some of the prime exclusions to look out for in your policy that maybe you want on your policy in the first place?
I'm going to tell you, because then you're going to say you want that covered.
You know, trust me, you know how cheap I am when it comes to insurance. I spend way too much on it already. So
We don't let you buy actual cash value policies anymore.
right. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is the thing that creates that extra liability, these exclusions that you want to make sure you're comfortable with as an investor, so.
You know, liability can be as bare bones or as comprehensive as you want. And this isn't to be self-serving. We offer a policy that's very unique that has assault and battery. You won't find it on too many coverages. You won't find it on your Safeco, your Allstate, or your Farmers, or any traditional insurance company, because they're not in that world. Child molestation, we have as a benefit. These are bells and whistles. These claims are so infrequent, but insurance carriers will offer it, and it doesn't necessarily make their premiums that much higher or that much less. They're just differentiators. They may be important to you, something else may be important to somebody else. It's sexual assault, since that's such a controversial element of our society right now. You know, what is considered sexual assault? Well, why are you as a landlord even concerned about it? Well, if Johnny comes over to play at Bill's house and Uncle whatever isn't nice to Johnny, and all of a sudden it gets back and everybody is suing everybody, you as a landlord are the deep pocket you're going to be brought into. Do you have any defense in your policy anywhere that can possibly speak to that? If so, you want to know if you have coverage or not. Someone gets shot on your property. You know, you got nothing to do with it. Zero to do with it. Someone gets hurt, someone gets shot, someone gets sued. And as a consequence, they're not frequent occurrences, but they're expensive occurrences. Most policies exclude them. Exclusions are very, very commonplace for many things. The renter getting hurt on the property, and I'm gonna slow down on this. I'm starting to work my way up the pyramid I was talking about, but I'm gonna go real slow on this next part, because this next part is so relevant to homeowners, especially right at this moment in time. I can't stress it enough. Wherever I speak, it's like the #1 topic. Your renters are not covered under a traditional policy. So if I'm in the house as a renter and I mop the floor and I slip and I hit my head, I'm responsible. I'm the one who mopped my own floor, I hit my head, it's me, I get a Kaiser, they sew me up, hopefully they don't do a lobotomy, I still got a brain, I go about my business. And I like colors. So you know, it's a silver hair, you know, I still remember one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Why do I even go there? So many people are now considering short-term Airbnb vacation rentals. If I, as an owner, mop the floor and hand the keys to the renter for 3 days, and they slip on the floor, I'm getting sued. That risk is not contemplated under a traditional landlord-tenant policy, which is another verbiage of what we're talking about here.
Just one quick question real quick, because my girlfriend actually has 4 sublets, so she leases and then she subleases on Airbnb. But she leased with her LLC, because it was a place in Fullerton where they allow corporate housing. So under that event, she wouldn't be liable, correct? Because she has the...
I would need to know more circumstances, but the bigger picture that I'm trying to make here is she should have, or anybody should have, a different type of insurance policy altogether. Because you are now a hotel operator. And commercial activity, business activity, and I got a few more tangents I'm going to go off on here, is excluded by all policies. A renter getting hurt on your property where the renter was responsible for what occurred. I'm not talking about the renter putting, you know, a plug into an outlet that had 22 other things plugged into it, and maybe the electrical wasn't up to code, and you still pay the damn fire claims. But that's another thing, you know.
Airbnb covers it to one
Fire.
$1 million.
And I'll get off an Airbnb in just a second, Mr. Matthew. But
He basically works.
one word.
It was not me, just finished before you.
No, I'm teasing. Where I'm going though is, you know, little Johnny plugs in his toy, or Bill plugs in his electric screwdriver and gets hurt. That's covered. I want to make sure I'm making a real good distinction here. But Bill's mowing the lawn and trips and cuts up his leg on his lawnmower. That's not covered under the liability because Bill caused it. Now you're the Airbnb, you're short-term renting. Anything that happens to Bill on that property, you're getting named. And it's going to be excluded from the traditional landlord-tenant policy because it's a business activity.
I just have a question about that. If you own an apartment building and you rent out some of the units to someone who then, like he was saying, is going to sublease it, is the owner of the property getting sued? Or and has to worry about that piece of insurance for the short-term rentals, or is it the operator?
You got some of these things. If I get hurt, I'm suing everybody, first of all. If I'm in California, I'm suing your mother, your father, I'm suing the whole world.
Even the dog.
I'm suing the pedestrian that walked by and saw that. You know? I mean, you're gonna get sued, you're the property manager, you're gonna get sued, the owner's gonna get sued, the guy subleasing is gonna get sued. Everybody's going there. I don't care if you have a provision in the lease that says you can't do it. You're still going to get sued. So the question is, that defense, is it going to be picked up by your policy?
Right.
And that's the discussion you have to get into, excuse me, with your insurance provider, with your insurance agent. There are specific insurance companies that cover that risk. That coverage is available. What you have to be careful with is the ignorance of not knowing what's going on in your own building, because claiming ignorance is, I mean, Peter, help me, I don't think that's going to help you in the law. But, and that's one variable, is the short-term rental market. The other tangent on that pyramid where I was going, and I don't mean to speak too long, I mean, you can kick me out of there. And if you don't start doing your properties right, we're going to have more.
Been doing this for 10 years, I think
The other business activity that's happening more and more and more is, of course, marijuana, right? You get the basements. You get the lights in the basements. In California, we don't have a lot of basements. I just came from Colorado where everybody's growing and everybody's supposedly making money hand over the new builders. But cannabis rush, I guess you should say. point where I'm going here, though, is any business activity allows, and again, I'm speaking as the industry representative, if you will, it gives me an out to deny the claim. I don't care if someone slipped on your property. I go to the property and I see the property is being used for a business activity, totally unrelated to the person who slipped on your property. I now have an out to deny that claim. So what does that do to an owner? You better protect yourself with your leases in the language in your lease. I can't tell you how many times we walk into non-performing note houses. I'm switching channels now for anybody who owns notes, and sometimes they turn into non-performing notes, where it's nothing but growing marijuana all over the house. Electricity bill's like $1,200 a month, you know, or $1,800 a month. And it's just a farm. It's just a cannabis farm. So you've got to be aware of what's going on with your property.
I just have a quick question, because I've heard two opposite things, and I don't know if I'm just misunderstanding, but you said...
It's insurance, that's exactly what I meant to do.
That's you said at one point that it doesn't matter if you write it into your rental agreement that you can't sublease, that you can still be sued, but then you said you better have it in there.
I think that puts you in a very good defensible position.
Okay.
And I think if you're self-managing, you're going to have an obligation to know what's going on with your property. If you're not self-managing, then you need to see what your property manager is representing to you in their property management agreement
Okay.
to protect you from this type of occurrence.
So I get it, they can sue you anyway, but you'll have a better position if it's in there.
A much better position. And, you know, I'm a little, slanted, California. We've probably been writing insurance, like I said, about 32 years now. We've probably had one liability claim out of state, and we probably have had, and I write much, much more insurance out of state than I do in state, but all of our liability claims come from California. I mean, they just do.
And keep in mind too, when we're talking about, I do the same thing, I sublease properties on the short-term rental side. In every single policy, what he's talking about, any normal renter's policy or homeowner policy or possibly commercial policy specifically, if there's a little difference, if they allow business uses, they specifically disclaim and short-term rentals, they exclude it from the policy. And so, if I'm going and subleasing a property from a landlord, their insurance policy doesn't cover short-term rentals, right? So that's a big problem, right? And so, so I had to go get a policy that covers me for that exact thing, so that way we're taken care of as well. And I was able to help me get it, and it covers that specifically. So if there is a problem and I get sued, then and their insurance doesn't cover, mine does, because it covers the liability associated with any claim that from something that I did on a building. So it's really important to have that extra policy in place. And if you have a commercial one, I don't know if you can add that, especially if you're like, I don't know if some of my tenants are doing this because I'm not there they're paying their rent. You might expect every 6 months or something, and it looks great, you're fine, or every year maybe, and so you may want to even look at that in your policies and say, is that a possibility to add it in case they're doing it and you don't know about it, just to kind of cover yourself from an operator's perspective. Maybe I'm wrong, but on multifamily, I'm ignorant. I don't do a lot of apartment building coverage, and I don't want to come up here and talk about something that I really don't know. I would believe that coverage is available because it's so prevalent. And a tenant policy is not going to cover that, so, I mean, you have to have that specialty policy specifically for it. And what's really cool about those types of policies is the loss of rents coverage. If there's a claim, your rents are really high, in those things. So you're doing really well, and, it's a great thing to have in place. But anyways, so
He's scaring me.
I'm like, okay, I'm like, it's great, I have no liability. Ed's my insurance agent.
Were you alluding to subletting insurance?
Yes.
Like a really esoteric kind of...
Yeah, I buy a house right now at the top of the market in California.
Exactly, correct. So there's scalability in the short-term rental business.
Right.
But so you need to present that to a landlord, that not only are you leasing with the LLC, but you have a specific subletting insurance. And maybe if you want to go above and beyond, you use like a percentage lease that they use in commercial.
Well, it's so unknown about yet. I mean, it's still, people are learning about it, so that education is really important. And there are some risks from a landlord's perspective, you know. I was talking to, you know, Robin in the back earlier about how, you know, professional operator, you have a lot less risk, but if you don't have a professional operator with the right financials, all the short-term rental operations risk is on the landlord really, because they can't, if you can't take the money from them that are doing the short-term rentals in the first place, they're not making enough money or have enough money in the first place. They might qualify for the lease or something like that, but there's a big claim and they're not doing it right, or you know they're not operating it right. There's problems there. So let's talk about that a little bit on the insurance side. I mean on the legal protection side here. When you know we're talking about different types of investments. You know, you deal with a lot of like the syndication types of investments with your clients where they're raising large amounts of money and stuff like that. Can you list every single risk in a PPM right now? No, I'm just kidding. So there's like 5 pages of risks in a PPM. But like what are the primary risks you're trying to protect your clients from when they're, you know, operating a fund or fixing and flipping a house? Or owning rental property, like what are you seeing as far as like, hey, I'm trying to look at your whole picture and what am I trying to protect in the first place?
Yeah, there's different risks for those different categories, but one point back to what Ed was talking about, I have a client who has properties in Long Beach and they are fully rented, or I should say fully leased to an Airbnb operator. And we actually require the operator to get that short-term leasing insurance. So you may not, you know, you have lenders who require certain insurance, you may have landlords who, if they're, you know, this is sort of a property that is fully being leased, you know, we have almost a commercial lease of a multifamily building to an Airbnb operator. So that was just a tangent on that. But, you know, if you are raising money from investors and passively putting that into, say, a multifamily building, there's a whole slew of risks in addition to sort of liability, dog bites, you know, all of those things. And that's in addition to securities laws, which is a totally different topic. We can talk about it later, but you need to tell all of your investors absolutely everything that could go wrong with the property and with their investment. So that's why, if anybody knows what PPM is, a private placement memorandum, you have, you know, 4 pages that describe the economics of the deal and the terms, and then you have 20 pages of risk factors that say, you know, we may not discover the environmental liabilities of this property, and if something comes up, it could, you know, reduce the projections. If you, you know, have, oh, it was suddenly discovered that it's a gas station, we have this big environmental cleanup, you may lose money.
Including you can go out, leave the country, and I can take all your, they can commingle and go to Vegas, and I can have a gambling problem, and you know, there can be all kinds of things, right? So
there are people who are into just buying raw land, and I know people who they petition to change like the zoning laws in that city. Would they have to, like, let's say it's in a typically residential neighborhood, would they have to change or get different types of insurance for like a mixed use kind of property? Or?
Are you talking about insurance-wise or
from an asset protection side, it's just owning an asset.
If you are in the context of raising money from other investors, is that what you're?
No, I mean, because there's times where like people will change the zoning laws on a property. Maybe they want to have like a corner lot, right? They want to have like a drive-through Starbucks, and it's typically in like a residential neighborhood where they have to pay insurance like for residential and commercial.
You're going to pay a commercial policy typically.
Well, first you have to get the zoning changed. Right. And that I don't think has anything really to do with insurance. That's sort of, you know, land use petitioning the specific city. Yeah. And presumably once you've got the zoning changed and you were building your Starbucks, then you have a commercial policy. Yeah.
That's the case there, yeah. And then, yeah. So Peter, can you touch about, you know, who's here wants to raise money in different ways for flips and real estate and stuff like that? Okay, so really, really important topic when it comes to protecting yourself in the liability aspect is securities laws, so you're not breaking them by raising money, you know, and understanding how to protect your investors and the legalities in some of these contracts, you know, and you know, if you were, for example, to do like joint ventures with people and they were passive and not doing any management control, even if it's one or two people, it could be considered a security because they're passive and not doing active work involved. But if they're going through and being a partner with you and actively engaged in that and putting the money in then too, then it may change the metrics of this stuff. Can you kind of touch on some of these little security topics?
Yeah, there's a whole slew of very complex and lengthy security regulations that'll put you to sleep, but the general rule is if somebody's giving you money and they're coming to you and you're doing all the work and you're getting all the control and they're saying, here's my check, you know, give me quarterly distributions, that's a security. Versus, I'm gonna buy a property with you, we're both gonna manage it, we're both gonna put in sweat equity, we're both gonna make decisions. But if you're taking somebody's money and they're expecting you to do the work and give them a return, generally, that's a security.
What if they just borrowed a promissory note secured against the property?
That's a loan, and generally, debt is not a security, but it can be. So it depends.
And it depends on the state you do it too, so question here.
What if they're an equity partner, they don't have passive, not doing any work or involved, but they're on title? They're on title with you. But they're
If they're
with you,
passive, you're probably generally selling them security.
but they're on title with you.
It's a matter,
But they're not doing any work.
it's a matter of
If they're
dollars.
passive. I mean, and again, want to examine the specifics. I mean, you know, you have to really look at that specific situation, but generally, if somebody's giving you money with an expectation of profit from your work, you're probably selling them security.
Even though they're on title.
That is not a dispositive factor that makes it.
It's a matter of documenting
Yeah.
the activities that they have and things like that, and how they're adding that value and helping with that decision-making ability more than it is, you know, them being on title or having legal, technical contract ownership, you know?
So it's better, so it's better promissory note with the trustee.
But usually a better structure, but you want to be there
Well-
with lending laws and things like that. And
Yeah, and again, obviously, with the promissory note, you have to pay somebody back, whether the property performs or it doesn't perform. If somebody's giving you equity, there's no guarantee of repayment there. So, you know, money can be more expensive one way or the other. So I don't think you can really say, you know, a promissory note is a better structure because it depends on the specific deal, it depends on.
Yeah, if you're raising millions of dollars from a bunch of people, syndication's better structure for sure, because you're pooling money together. You can't, it's hard to do that with a promissory note, you're just selling a security because you're hypothecating the note and all that stuff. So
Promissory note is not a security.
it can be.
Generally,
it's
debt
not.
is not a security, but it can be.
If you're underwriting the process and things like that.
It can be if it has some convertible features, it can be in certain ways that it's securitized, there's
certain
very specific instances where you have to, but a general loan that's just collateralized by a property is generally not considered.
So it depends.
But it depends. You're learning.
So provided Ed gives me the best insurance possible, but the deal is something goes sideways and I'm getting sued and I can't get out of it. Back in the day, people used to do single LLCs for every deal they did an LLC, right? And now there's other things, but can you button it up so that if I have to jettison myself out of the whole thing, say, you take it, there's nothing here, I'm bulletproof, you can't get to me. Does that make sense?
You mean if you have an LLC?
Well, you have to help me structure, or should I get an LLC or an S corp, or what's the best, I mean, that's what you said, right?
How do you make this ironclad bulletproof?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very dependent on specific situations, but if you have a property inside an LLC and you have totally separate bank accounts, you know, you keep corporate formalities, you don't commingle your funds, you don't have a credit card that you're buying stuff for your property in your personal name, you know, I mean, so then yes, that's what an LLC is for, to keep the liability within that entity. You know, whether or not people will try to find a way, especially in California, to come after you personally, no doubt.
Right.
But you have, you know, a much better position. You could say, this, you know, this is the business of this LLC. It has nothing to do with me personally, even though, you know, maybe you're the manager or maybe you have an again, another entity that's the manager, you know. But, I mean, you don't want to necessarily do that if, like, I think I've told this story before, but I have a client who had, I think, 7 or 8 properties in Long Beach. She was extremely careful in picking her tenants. You know, worked very well with her lenders, did all of the remodeling in her properties herself, you know, generally visited, never had an LLC. You know, had amazing insurance, just very careful picking her tenants. All her tenants had renters insurance policies, retired and moved to Mexico.
And I think that's important to understand.
You know, so
It's different, like it's gonna be different for each person based on the assets they own, but the general idea is limit your equity inside each entity for protection there. Have really good insurance in place on all the assets and make sure those exclusions, you're super comfortable with that. Have an umbrella policy over all of it, you know, as well. And then make sure that, you know, the number one thing is kill people with kindness, no matter how messed up it is, right? Do your business right. And then at the same time, making sure like contractors have all the right insurance and, you know, your tenants have the tenant insurance and they're all your people are naming you as an additional insurer on their policy for managing properties, you know, like those little things and the not commingling, because the first thing an attorney's gonna do is be like, for sure, small business, they commingle, guaranteed. You know, so, you know, like they're paying personal expenses on a credit card and, you know, like, and it's stuff like that that they're gonna go for first thing. But, you know, and I'm not an attorney, but that's generally what I do in this case is try to look at that along with the tax aspects of it and separate the businesses as well, you know, into different types and limit that equity, so.
How strict?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So when you talk about the commingling, so when you're a new business owner and you haven't actually started, you know, generating any active revenue yet, right? Or so you have some obviously startup expenses, right? And so that's going to be commingling because you're using your personal money potentially, right? So is there a magic line from when that commingling is then kind of waived because you were just kind of in a startup situation?
yeah, there's no, first of all, there's no, like, if you spend $2, it's okay.
Right.
There's no magic line.
Right.
But the line starts the day you form your LLC. There's no reason you have to spend your personal dollars to do your startup costs because you form your LLC, you open a bank account, you put money in that LLC's bank account. You get checks from that entity, you get a credit card. You can form an LLC, pay an attorney $50,000, and if you don't keep corporate formalities, it is absolutely worthless.
And what you're doing is if you actually go through and you pay, you know, the $500 that Peter charges to set up a whole entity in multiple states, then if you have to pay that out of your own pocket, you need to trace that and book it as a contribution to the business that you contributed that money to the business, so it's completely separated. Like an attorney on initial startup costs, you haven't even done any business yet, so you don't really have any liability for that business. I mean, you know, some could sue no matter what, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you haven't done anything yet. then it's
all of
not
our
gonna cover it.
operating agreements will say, you know, the managers, the principals are entitled to reimbursement for organizational startup costs, you know, but once you have that entity formed and it's doing anything, you need to have separate bank accounts and, you know, certain entities you actually need to have annual meetings and other things. LCs really typically don't. But the more you know, I mean, if you have a separate office for your LLC, that's, you know, the more you can separate the entity from you personally, the better.
Question?
The equity, you can limit your equity within the LLC for like rental properties. So if you limit your equity.
No, meaning start separating entities once your equity is growing to a certain point where you're not comfortable where, you know, you have 5 properties inside of an LLC. If each one is paid off for $500,000 each, you're exposed for all of those other entities. So if anybody sues you, that entity, they can get anything inside that entity. So, but if you have 50 grand a house or something, it's not as much.
What I'm saying when you say limit, what is the limit?
Your personal preference and your personal comfort level. It's a personal decision based on your own risk tolerance level, you know? So, I mean, I don't know what the rule is, I mean.
Yeah, there's no bright line. And it depends on, you know, what you have other than those assets, right? So if you have $2 million in your personal name and you have a $100,000 house, you probably don't want that $2 million exposed. But if you have a $100,000 house and you don't really have, much else, I mean, so, it depends really on your level, it depends on insurance, it depends on how you choose your tenants, if you have tenants, it depends on a whole lot of things.
And you could be having, if you're a multi-millionaire outside and you have a couple of rental properties in an LLC, that might be great, but you might want to have another layer of protection there or something like that if you're really wealthy, because what if they use that you commingled or something, and you're like, no, well, I have another layer now too, because that entity commingled incorrectly or something like that, So it's just looking at your picture as a whole and saying, what's right for me personally based on my net worth, based on how much money you're making every month, what people can go after,
So what's an umbrella policy too? Right, that would go like on top of the entity itself, right?
Correct. So on top of the current insurance policies in place. They're not going to go on top of the entity. The entity is what would be insured along with you personally and anything else you own if you're doing an umbrella.
So the entity, you have the normal insurance on it.
The normal property insurance,
Sure.
right?
And then there's an umbrella, right? So what exactly is the umbrella, or what does it?
It says if you have a $2 million policy, then if you have an umbrella up to 10, it might cover you from 2 to 10 on everything that is not excluded in the umbrella policy. It's like another layer of insurance on top of your current insurance policy. That makes sense? So it's just like, if you're worth $10 million and your current homeowner's policy is $2 million per year, $1 million in aggregate, you want to get the $1 million to the $10 million in coverage in case someone dies or something on a property and sues you for $10 million. You know what I mean? And it's in your own name or something like that. So
That umbrella can cover multiple.
I believe so, yes. So you have to name them on the entities and you usually get it like for your house and anything you own, so.
The only risk you run on something like that, you're really talking about some net worth here. Okay, let's just identify what we're talking about. You got some net worth, some real net worth. You don't want to layer up on umbrella, because what if the claim's excluded? You're screwed. You're totally screwed. If you got some real net worth, put it in an LLC.
Yeah.
Because then you're really just exposed, like these gentlemen are talking about, you're just exposed for the equity you would have in that LLC. But if I got 5, 10, 15 million, I'm just grabbing numbers, and I think I'm covered because I got $1 million per occurrence, and I got 2 million aggregate, and then I got 5 million on top of it, and something nasty happens, where my insurance company is going to figure out every single angle they can to get out of that claim. Man, if I spent the $600, 5 minutes later.
His office is in Santa Monica, guys.
If I spent the 25,000 with Peter, per hour, whatever I spent with Peter, I'm not going to be thinking twice about it. Should that set of circumstances present themselves?
And it's worth every penny, by the way, guys, so I'm telling you, I used them. I think on our very first joint venture agreement, he sat me down and went over every single provision in that thing, so I understood it. And every pancakes. Well, yeah, okay. See, pancakes is not even $500, So that being said, when you're talking about the umbrellas and things like that, can you talk about some of the specific risks that you see when someone is fixing and flipping a property specifically that may not have necessarily on like a long-term rental that you might want to what
Well,
risks
first of
are
all, you have a
added?
vacant house. I mean, let's just call the obvious. You got a vacant house, you may board it up, you may not board it up, you may put a fence around it, you may not put a fence around it. You're gonna fix and flip in a neighborhood. Theoretically, there's kids in that neighborhood. I know as a kid, we can't wait to go play in a vacant house, right? It's just like, and maybe I'm gonna throw a rock and break it. Okay, that wasn't me, that was the other kid, but, there's risk associated with the vacant property. That's just the reality. And if you have a swimming pool, oh my goodness, that takes that risk and multiplies it by 50.
You have skateboarders in the pool.
Skateboarders, if it's vacant, you drain it, you think you're cool, no, you got exactly what you just said.
I've done that with skateboarders.
He was the one who broke the window. You mentioned a word there, and I have my own personal experience with squatters, where I'm a note investor. I like buying notes. I'm a little bit more passive than rental property. and we had to foreclose on a property, and on the day of foreclosure, this person broke in and they took possession of the property. The owner had moved out, cash for keys deals, thought it was gonna be an easy slam dunk thing, no pain. Next thing I know is I got a squatter in there who changes all my locks. This is LA County, changes all my locks, and there are a lot of squatter rights. Squatter in turn, what do? They really have me. They sublease it. They execute a lease, and the squatter is mowing the lawn, he's collecting rent, he's paying utilities. I don't know how he got the utilities turned on to this day. The only thing that made me feel good is, this is really an ironic story, and it's true. It really is true. And the only thing that made me feel good is he got so pissed off about 8 months later, when I finally got him out of there, he lit the thing on fire. You're like, yes, but wait. So my insurance paid me off. It was 8 months of aggravation, but I at least got paid off by my own insurance policy on the deal. But is in California? Yeah, and 8 months was short. 8 months was short. So only because you mentioned squatter and you mentioned liability, and we're talking about all these things, there's a squatter who gets hurt in your property, and then on the county, you have liability exposure.
There's a squatter on my property.
He's gonna get hurt.
This is on Facebook, so I can't say anything else, but.
I heard this word, I recently did some investing in Mississippi, and they have a thing where he lended and had foreclosed on the flipper, and he ended up finding out he wasn't paying his taxes, he didn't pay the taxes on the property too. In Mississippi, they can buy the tax lien without you even knowing as the lender. They did improvements on the property, so when he came and found out that he foreclosed came, he had to pay back all the improvements they did on the property, and then some, because they're like, well,
Yeah, a lot of outside states are like that, where if you buy the property tax lien back, then you have to do any improvements because they owned it at that time.
the property and the person who did it was in the tax office, so they were picking them up.
You know, you brought up one thing, and I just want to go back before we got off that channel of Airbnb altogether. We'll get back to the vacant. But anyone else who's thinking about Airbnb, the city of Long Beach, for example, which is where I make my home, it's illegal. It's absolutely illegal. So, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, because there's no enforceability, right? But let's think about the insurance aspect. You're now operating an illegal business in the city. I have every opportunity to deny the claim. So there's two carriers, and I want to, you know, anyone's doing this stuff, write it down, and you can go on their, I'm not being self-serving here, you can go on their websites, they deal with the public directly. One is CBIZ, and it's literally the letter C, B-I-Z-Z. They're probably one of the largest in the country. And another one is called Proper, P-R-O-P-E-R Insurance. And they have provisions in their policy for the sublease situations that Matt was talking about earlier. They have provisions in the policy if the city says it's illegal. I think if anyone's following this stuff, San Diego just came out and passed some very strict, and how they're going to enforce it, I still don't know, but they passed some very strict laws. If you have a second home, you cannot Airbnb it. The fines are through the roof. So that's illegal activity. I'm an insurance company, I'm going to deny your claim. So please, just be careful if you're doing any sort of Airbnb. There's just so many facets to what can occur. And I'll leave it with this. Airbnb gives you as an owner a guarantee. It's not backed by anything. It's backed by Airbnb guarantee. There is no underlying insurance policy. And a lot of people get put to sleep on that. I live in Belmont Shores. My neighbor has Airbnb. He had a water claim, $9,000, Airbnb didn't pay. It's that simple. They couldn't hit the credit card of the person who rented the place for $9,000, and so the claim got disputed. Say it's a disputed claim, we're not going to pay. So just have your eyes open. I'm just trying to create some awareness. Have your eyes open on that type of stuff. Know the difference between a guarantee, and I'm not even taking a shot at Airbnb. I'm just saying it's a guarantee. It's not an insurance
Keep in mind,
policy.
guys, it's not just Airbnb, it's all the other platforms too that you can list on. And they have different policies, you have VRBO, FlipKey, like there's tons of them. And so understanding their policies for each one is really important when you're doing that aspect, so.
I'm going to step back. I have a more broad question about
for entities. Is it still a thing that a single member LLC really doesn't have a bail? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you'd have, somebody who has another small interest. But you could have a single member LLC, and it also depends on the state. You could have a single member LLC with a separate manager. But, if you just form an LLC, and it's just you and you do nothing else, it's probably going to be problematic.
So it's not protection, but it's
Well,
not.
again, it depends on the situation. It can be, but you corporate formalities, having a separate manager helps, having somebody who's a very small percentage owner can help. There's lots of different ways that you can make it work.
One of my clients previously had a structure where they would have an LLC form where the client was a 99% owner and passive, but they had a general partner that was a 1% owner, and it was another LLC that was a partnership that didn't own anything.
They're like,
And so they were able to, it's just another small form of asset protection because usually the passive members don't have any real liability there because they're not, other than what they've invested in the thing in the first place. But there's some cool, weird stuff. I don't know if it even works, but
Some people, form an LLC and they have that LLC as a 1% owner of their various. I mean, so there's lots of different things that you can do.
Right. Question.
Well, then we were talking, where you were talking about, you get up to certain levels on personal income or personal, wealth and business wealth. At some point, would you just, maybe like your home stuff, put in like a living trust so it can't be touched outside of those entities?
Living trust doesn't offer you protection.
Liability.
If you can get it out of the trust, somebody can get at it.
Okay.
But there are, certain like trusts that are in Nevada or offshore. There are ways to put your assets in a trust that it would be protected. Because I'm not specifically an asset protection lawyer, but a living trust won't be.
I remember like Schwarzenegger hit that person and they couldn't get nothing because he didn't own anything.
Well, it can be a
that's-
non-revolving trust.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, that's an irrevocable trust is different than a living trust.
Yeah, a living trust or revocable trust, you can go after. Irrevocable, you technically don't own it anymore because.
So you can put it out your house and things and stuff like that.
And it's funny because a lot of people think that you get the asset protection from the trust, but in reality, the trust owns now, it's like just a replacement for you. So your trust, and it's really only for, in most cases, for, estate planning purposes and things like that.
Exactly.
And it's great for that. And, you can have multiple types of trusts and things like that. There's all kind of creative strategies, but it really doesn't provide any asset protection. So you want to have the assets owned by an entity that the trust owns. In the first
Is it
place.
more like a level of secrecy, so whoever comes after you can't find what you have?
I think they were doing that when you have like a land trust and you can change who the beneficiary is and things like that. That's more in that realm. But when you're dealing with owning a trust, for example, then like if I own a trust, it's really like, hey, how do I want my stuff dispersed to my kids and everything that is owned the trust, and
Correct me if I'm wrong, a living trust, let's say I'm your beneficiary, and you pass on trust to me, when I got in trouble, they cannot touch the money, the asset from that trust.
because you don't own it, you're just a beneficiary, right?
Is that correct?
That's right. But I mean, again, a living trust, really, the purpose is to avoid probate.
Right.
So it has nothing to do really with asset protection whatsoever.
So
You protect your kids,
You can,
from
yeah.
the money you have.
Yeah, and then you can also do things like tell them how much they get and things like that over a period of time, and have an executor do that kind of thing and everything, which is really valuable because you start making a lot of wealth in real estate. You don't really want your kids to have it, You wait till they're 40 or more, and tell them they're never get anything, and maybe Bill Gates and give you nothing, So
he's giving them $1 million each.
okay, well, that's
Close to nothing.
for them. Yeah. they're like my gadget in my kitchen cost that much, So but yeah, exactly. So
Matt, just to be clear on that, so you guys did say that the trust kind of makes like a separate you, right? And I think it's like more like your past, right? And then
It's something you own all your assets inside of.
yeah, okay, and I was thinking like, well, that's what an entity does. I mean, it separates, it's you, like, from
A
you.
living trust does nothing, it has no liability protection whatsoever.
It's your social security number.
Yeah.
It usually
All
doesn't
it
have a
does is when you die, the assets don't have to go through probate. They just get passed to whoever you want them to because they're not technically owned by you, but there's no liability protection.
I see, yeah, where like an LLC or is for that
That's right.
in there,
Right.
but,
That's right.
yeah, I mean, like, so you put a property in a trust and something
A
happens. to that.
trust is not an entity.
It's
You
not.
don't pay $800 in franchise tax or whatever when you, a trust is like a document, basically.
It's like, hey, I want this to happen.
Yeah.
Real quick, we'll come back to that.
Thank you.
And I want to go back to that fix and flip insurance, and I want you to, if you, can you go over some of the specifics with regard to what additional insurance you should have when you're flipping a property versus holding specifically?
You know, fix and flip vacancy is like, a typical policy is going to exclude vacant properties. Or if they're vacant beyond a certain amount of days, for example, the amount of coverage will be reduced. Every policy can be different. What I really should have started out by saying on the fix and flip is if you have an Allstate agent, and trust me, I work with fix and flippers all over the country. So if there's a fix and flipper that I'm going to say something, it's not meant with the intention of insulting anybody. Fix and flippers have insurance agents in their hip pocket. If I'm doing 7, 8, 9, I got an Allstate guy, I want my cheap binder, I want my lender's name, I want this thing slam dunked, I'm going to be in and out of this thing, I'm doing cosmetic, and I don't care if it's vacant for 30, 60, 90 days, just give me my policy, get my lender off my case. If the insurance company discovers that, and your place burns down, they do not have to pay the claim. That's the risk that you're running, that's the risk that you're putting your investor in danger of occurring.
If they discover what?
That the place is vacant and it's being repaired, and that's not disclosed. They thought you bought a house, they thought you're moving into it. They think little Johnny's gonna play with his truck, and there's gonna be 2 cars in the driveway, or 1. That's a whole different situation than someone doing a drive-by and saying, shoot, there's 20 workers at the place and nobody's moved in. If I'm an insurance company and that place burns down, and I'm that Allstate guy that wrote you the policy because I like getting your fix and flip business, and they're giving me 8, 9 deals every couple of months. The insurance company has a claim, and they find the place was vacant, they're going to deny your claim. So you get screwed, your lender gets screwed.
But that happens only if you don't disclose it.
If you disclose it to the agent, the chances are they're not going to write the policy.
So what do you do around
So then what do you
So
do?
you get a specific fix and flip policy.
So there is a policy.
And in this, I am going to be a little bit self-serving. It's a niche business. It's not course of construction. You're not doing ground up. You're really just doing 60, 90-day cosmetic stuff internally most of the time, and you're trying to get a renter in there as fast as you can. But it is going to be more expensive than the Allstate policy. It's going to be less expensive than the Fair Plan policy, though. $200 grand in California is going to be about $700 and $1.50 for the liability for an annual policy. It's refundable once you complete your fix and flip, as opposed to calling up your Allstate guy who just slams the binder just to satisfy the lender.
And that's
So you just have to be aware of where your money's coming from. Go ahead, please.
This is kind of an odd question, but if you are doing a remodel on your own home, do you need something like that as product, or does your insurance cover you?
If you are moving out,
No, if you're just doing a remodel of your own home.
well, then the home is not vacant. The home is still occupied.
Correct.
So in that situation, the answer would be no.
Okay.
If you are physically leaving the home, you're going to go to your Allstate agent, he's going to write some sort of endorsement, charge you $700, $800 until your remodel is complete, or he's going to say, I got to cancel your policy.
Why are we doing the fumigation?
Fumigation for 3 days in between buyer and seller, the homeowner's policy is going to take care of it.
Usually 30 days is usually the rule, right?
It's usually a 30 days occupancy, but again, in that situation, the home was occupied all the way up until that time period. On a true fix and flip, you're buying a place that's vacant, and it's now raw, and you're doing your work, and your workers are going there daily, even if it's all internal. Even if you got the automatic lights going on, and you got a great cosmetic workaround. The reality is, if I'm the insurance company, you've given me this wide open door to deny any money.
Did you say that policy, that premium that you pay, that $700 or whatever, gets reimbursed after the fix and flip is done?
It doesn't get reimbursed, it gets refunded depending on how many months that policy is in force.
Oh, okay, okay,
So if it's $1,200 for the year and your fix and flip takes 3 months to do, then you're gonna get about $800 back.
that makes more sense. Okay,
And
thank you.
that's key, because a lot of times, like in the beginning, nobody ever tells you, and you're like, oh, I'll finish my rehab in less than a month. It's less than 30 days vacant, I'm good to go, I don't have to say anything, right? But in reality, like, you know, you have that construction risk happening, and if it didn't matter necessarily if it's 30 days, if you didn't tell them and you're doing all this construction of the job, it increases the risk profile and it gives them an out if there is an issue. And you have a lot of construction risk, you know, by contractors coming, when there's nails all over the ground, and, you know, if they're not doing their job, they're not cleaning up. So, you know, in the beginning, we were getting those vacant policies, you know, saying, hey, it's a vacancy policy and it's 3 months, but it's 3/4 of a year's worth of insurance as well, and there's no refunds. And we were spending tons on that, because we're like 3 months, 3 months, 3 months every time. And then Ed came along and said, I'll give you a refund. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. We're gonna save thousands, you know? And so if you have a specialty, you know, if your insurance is set up for this, you have to go to the right insurance agent, the right attorney, the right CPA, the right people involved to give you the right advice for what you're specifically doing, because it can save you thousands if you have the right person. Like I always tell people, like, they're like, oh, I don't want to go to, I don't want to do taxes, but they say, oh, I don't want to go spend $2,000, $3,000 on a CPA. Like you're spending for the knowledge base, so you don't have to ever have that mistake in the future, and you're going to save a ton down the line, you know? It's like going, when I went with Ed to get that right insurance policy, or I went to Peter to go get that, you know, get that joint venture contract put in place so it's structured correctly. You know, it's like taking that extra time. It sucks to spend the money, trust me. You know how much it is pulling teeth to get money out of me to pay Peter? It's like ridiculous. So like, I tell my brother, my brother, yeah, because my brother every time, he's like, why are you spending more money on legal fees, dude, again? You know, we spent this much on contracts and, you know, stuff. And so, you know, but it's important, right? You have to have that right advice to get that done. And, you know, you may not need it on, you know, the first one, or as much work on the first one that you're just getting started, but you start doing multiple, put that piece aside to pay for that, you know, because it's important. So.
He said a fix and flip insurance for vacant properties.
Right.
Now, the workers come and go, right?
Sure.
But let's say the house is far away. Let's say the workers, instead of coming and going far away,
stay there.
they sleep over sometimes.
Trailer outside.
You know, if you have a lease agreement with your workers,
Short-term.
and you
Well, they're not living there though.
well, if they're sleeping there and they're eating there and they're doing
You might be there, you know,
I don't know how you define living, but that sounds like living to me.
Technically.
You know, the workers, well, first of all, the workers are not going to be covered as far as any liability is. So I should start with that point there. Whether it's this vacancy policy we're talking about for fix and flippers, or it's your Allstate workaround, whatever, workers are not covered under those policies. You need to have your workman's comp, your general contractors, licensed, and you need to cover your workers. They get hurt on the job. This policy that I'm talking about, in 99% of the policies that I'm aware of, are not going to cover your workers. You should have your GC, your general contractor should have workman's comp. Workers should be covered there.
So they can sue.
And that's a real issue, because everybody's got a handyman, right? And everybody has people that aren't licensed doing work. You're running an exposure there. It's just a wide open exposure.
And what happens in that, right? You get sued by the contractor that, you know, or maybe they're unlicensed or they don't have the right, you know, workers' comp, and then one of the contractors sues. Liability falls on the homeowner, you know, and not necessarily the contractor. Now, you could go get copies of their insurance and things like that and sue them, But if, like you said, everyone's gonna get sued in that mix, right? And it's one of the harder things to do to get that workers' comp, you know, like I've literally paid for workers' comp because I had a really good crew and I'm like, no, dude, you're getting, I'm making sure you have this. You know what I mean? So it's things like that because I'm like, you're gonna do so many jobs for me, it's worth it. You know, so I mean, to protect yourself in the long run,
So you
it might be good for a while, but
You paid for work
I've had in the past.
on workers that work with a GC?
So if I have a really good crew that I know is not sophisticated and stuff like that, but they're maybe sometimes you don't need a GC to do work that's $10,000 or less in certain markets, you know. California, you probably need a GC to change a toilet, you know. So because they want you like, you got to pull a permit to change a toilet, you know, or that's what they try to tell you. But you know, like in certain markets, like in Tennessee, if it's under $20,000, a lot of times you don't even need a GC, but you know, we go get the permits from the licensed electricians and the plumbers and things like that. But if there's like general laborers, a lot of times like the handyman, they may not have all the insurance that they should and things like that. They got a helper that they just brought on, and they, you know, you got to get that policy and make sure everybody is covered, because if they're not, you're the one that's going to get sued as the homeowner, you know?
And their workers.
Exactly. So now there's risks, right? I mean, if you're going to go and have a guy, you know, change a light bulb, probably not going to go check that you're giving your workers comp. You know what I mean? Maybe you should if you're really wealthy, you know. So, but
Well, you find the line. You find the line. But you made a comment, Adam, and again, I do a lot of note investing. So what I want to do is demonstrate the exposure, and I'm going to project. So don't hold it against me. But you got a money investor. You put him on title, so he feels good. He's sharing the profits of the fixing flip, which is not uncommon. Let's be real. It's not uncommon at all. But now you got some day laborers, or you got some people that are doing trash pickup, or you got people who do not have anything to do with insurance on the property, right? And one of them gets hurt and finds some attorney, and now that investor that you put on title has a huge exposure. And because I do no investing and I've done fix and flips, I'm coming at you where if I'm that investor, I'm one pissed off person. Right? Some initials wanted to spit out there. I mean, I'm like this because you just left my rear end hanging out, and all I wanted to do was share on the profits of the fix and flip. So when you think through how you're going to structure these things, I'm not saying spend 25 grand with Peter or 10 grand or don't spend. I'm not arguing that way one way or the other. Again, this whole panel really is all about creating awareness. And if I'm the money guy, you better find a way to protect me. Because if I get hurt once, you're never going to see my money again. And if I'm real pissed off, I'm taking you to court. So you just got to be aware of the situations that you create inadvertently to people who have no clue as to what they're doing. They just want to share in the profits and fix it.
Now, if you get sued on your flipping entity, your flipping entity gets, you get sued or your flipping entity gets sued?
Well, it depends if you use Peter. You know, if your flipping entity is an LLC.
Escort.
Well, that's up to Peter to give you
What
that.
I'm saying is that it won't affect your other entities, the whole,
Yeah, if you have an escort, and again, you follow,
or LLC tax on escort.
then your liability will stop with your escort. But if you're also, along with your escort, you're putting a person with money on title, then they're not in your escort.
Sure. But my question is, if you get sued, that person, my escort, gets sued, but it doesn't affect my other entities, right?
Well, I can guarantee you that the first thing an attorney's going to try to do is to try to show that you and your escort are the same. That you haven't had, you didn't have your corporate meetings, you didn't have separate bank accounts, they're going to try to show all that stuff. But if you truly are operating out of an entity, then you would have a really, strong argument that, look, this is my corporation. It's totally separate from me. It's separate from, my LC over here, which holds my multifamily building. All this stuff should be separate.
Peter, I'm gonna end all of this with a question for each one of you guys. And Peter, can you talk to me about, or tell the audience a little bit about some of the main things you see people getting into trouble with, or horror stories that you've seen, or, you know, a couple of dispute things that, you know, kind of to watch out for a newer investor or a more seasoned investor, you know, when they're dealing with what common disputes you're seeing and that kind of stuff that come out? I know that's a loaded question, but it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
for a living every day, it's like, yeah, see enough disputes.
I think, you know, a lot of people, when they're in real estate, they think, oh, you know, I have a real estate license, or I have this or that. So they don't understand when they're taking money from other people, you know, you have to deal with not only the real estate laws, but also the securities laws. So people who are new to buying properties and trying to raise money, I see a lot of people getting in trouble. And obviously, you know, the market's pretty good. If you buy a property and you don't follow securities laws and your investor makes money, well, maybe it's okay for now. But there's a lot of, an extra layer of risk, obviously, if you're taking money from other people. I see a lot of people who don't form the right or enough entities, and I see a lot of people who form too many entities when they don't need to. And again, you know, like that one client of mine that I was talking about with 7 buildings, I suggested to her that she start thinking about forming LLCs, and she wasn't, you know, didn't want to do it, was comfortable with her structure, but, you know, at a certain point, you want to do that. On the other hand, you know, you don't need to form a different LLC for every different entity with another LLC as the manager of that entity. So I see a lot of people who spend too much money on that kind of thing and don't spend enough money on insurance, for example.
That's perfect. That's actually great, because I feel like that's one of the biggest problems too, is people get sold that you go start an entity before you actually have any real business in the first place, you know, and you're going, I just spent, you know, $800 and, you know, $500 on a tax return and I did nothing this year, you know, because it's like, go get the thing under contract and then move it to the entity afterwards or something like that. Your title insurance will transfer, everything will transfer as long as you're just right there at the same time.
Make sure your purchase contracts have good assignment provisions in them. And I see a lot of people who use LegalZoom or, you know, other sort of one-size-fits-all entity formation type services, and they don't form the right entity, they don't know if it's a member-managed or a manager-managed LLC, and then they come to me and they spend way more money than they had to if they come to us in the first place.
And that's extremely, it's even much more important if you ever have partners involved in your business, because you those other, you know, companies, you get template stuff. It's not like a real, you know, like document that you sat down with your partner to actually hash out what's the buyout clauses, what are, you know, what are the different provisions in there that you need to understand, you know, to protect both of you involved, you know? So it's important to have an attorney if you don't have that knowledge base already to do that. Ed, I want some horror stories, man. I want the, besides my fire that I have in my house, you know, like.
But you get so many examples, it's just, I mean, you're the only guy I know who leases to people who own pit bulls.
I don't have pit bulls, trust me.
No, after talking with Tyler, you have pit bulls, trust me.
Well, I love pit bulls.
Oh, he was just puppy, you know, what size pit bull are we talking about?
Pit bull's got a bag wrap, all right?
Yeah.
So we're not second that. Yeah, awesome. But anyways, yeah.
The horror stories that we get really are more with property damage than they are with liability. We've talked a lot about liability, but liability claims are relatively infrequent, relatively. The horror stories are water. You mentioned one already with trees. The weather patterns, not trying to be political one way or the other here, are changing. I do a lot of business in different states, and we are getting hailstorms like we've never seen in Atlanta and in Denver, and the roof claims are coming in droves. We're getting hurricanes in Missouri on a frequency level that we've never seen. The wind damage is something that insurance carriers are very, very nervous about, along with the hail damage. With wind comes falling trees. The falling trees is an issue. Roots, the tree roots breaking up driveways. The sewer line, the unknown claim. We have one going on with that right The other, the silent sleeper, the sewer line nobody thinks about that goes from the county to your house unless you flush your toilets, run your water, etc. If you have beautiful trees that give your house shade in the front, well, those roots are somewhere. And if those roots are plowing up the sewer line from the city to the house, it's going to break. It's going to stink. It's going to create water damage. It's not going to be covered. Those lines are an owner maintenance item. You should know where your tree roots go and the damages that they can do. That holds true to backyards and swimming pools. I've seen swimming pools broken up by people thinking, I want this tree and that tree, and they create their Shangri-La backyard. Next thing they know, is their pole is leaking all over the place, and, you know, because the guy selling them the trees didn't want to tell them about all the problems they were going to have. You know, so trees, neighbors' trees, that the branches lean over on your side. Your trees, the branches lean over on their side. Trees are an insurance agent's nightmare. They're a homeowner's nightmare. They're the neighbor of the homeowner's nightmare. They fall on cars. They fall on roofs. They break up cement. Know what's going on with your trees.
Before Ed was my insurance agent, we actually had a 70-mile-per-hour wind. I swear it was a sequoia in the backyard. It was really actually pretty far away from the house. It was not overhanging the house, I promise. And it was top heavy, and the thing cracked at like a little over the 6-foot mark, like where, and the tree was, I swear, it was like from this chair all the way over here as far as the trunk, and it cracked in half, fell on the house with a tenant inside of it. The entire roof collapsed. The front, it went over the entire house because it was such a high tree and it was 70-mile-per-hour winds, and it literally fell on the front porch that had those like pillars like they do in the Midwest. And those pillars collapsed too. Luckily, she was in the other side of the house, and you know, my manager was hugging her and stuff like that at the time, and you know, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because she didn't sue me. We were like, here, have a free hotel, you know, do whatever we'll rebuild the house, you know. So and
not just trees, bamboo too.
Oh yeah. So that was not with you, and it wasn't with the same company, so I didn't have to disclose it. So we're good to go.
Something about reporting prior losses, you know, on the application.
It wasn't my company. That's the whole thing.
You just gave me an outline on how your claims going forward. So trees are not your friends. As a landlord, trees are not your friends. I don't care how aesthetic they are. Get friggin' cactus, you know, and put a fence around it so the kid playing doesn't fall in it. Anyhow, you know where I'm going. Watch out for trees. Water is the next highest claim. Water lines break. Plumbing in a house, when you get a remodeled house, a lot of times the electrical's been redone, it's been put on circuit breakers, they got rid of the fuse box, the roof has been done, you got rid of the 4th layer of asphalt, and you actually put the new roof on it, but a lot of times the plumbing is ignored. Know how new, or more importantly, how old the plumbing is. Take care of your plumbing. Creates water leaks, and a lot of times that damage is under the deductible level. So you wake up to a $1,500 problem and the tenant is not going to pay your rent. And you're going to call me and I'm going to deny the claim because our policy's $2,500 deductible because we don't want to hear about it. We don't want the nuisance claims because that jacks up the rates. Water heater breaks in the garage. Take some responsibility. Even if they're rental houses and it's turnkey and it's passive income, I hate that word passive. It just lulls people into this thought process that I have no responsibility. If you are a homeowner, you are responsible for your home. If you are buying rental property and have got a great property manager, it's still your house. Accept that responsibility. Don't assume the property manager is so golden that they will always remember to pay your fire insurance while you travel around the world. Because when it burns down and they didn't pay it, well, soon, you know. Take some responsibility for these properties.
And I think, I mean, it's, the plumbing thing is really important because, I mean, we actually, after like the 4th time a water line broke to the street and it cost us $4,000, we started scoping the line every time on every rehab just to see if there are any trees or any problems that are going to cause that are a headache afterwards, you know. So those are the types of things you want to do as far as the preventative maintenance on these, and the plumbing can kill you, and don't go to your insurance agent with claims. If it's a $5,000 and your deductible is $2,500, save yourself the headache down the line of I try not to do the claims with him. The house that he has is one of my clients.
He says
it's not my house. So
the minute it's over $3,500, he's calling me, and saying, I need that $1,000 right now.
Then I won't put the claim in with your company if you give me, if you let me win at golf. So, no, but I mean, these are the types of things that happen. I mean, was the tree thing the worst thing? If you're lucky.
I haven't even the worst one.
What happened? Curious.
Day after closing, the buyer turned the water, but the mover forgot to turn off. The water went out in the refrigerator. So she turned the water and then moving on the third day. She opened the door. It's just flooded.
So you're like the typical, that's what I would say, water and trees,
Yeah.
Remind me not to do any business with you.
It wasn't him. It's all my referrals.
Whatever we're selling it to, just,
But it's another example of how insurance can really protect to the buyer. She got.
yeah.
Even that's it's not even.
Right, that's your homeowner's policy, and that's gonna take care of that situation, it's gonna take care of the tree situation. Yeah, it's still covered. But a landlord policy is got some different nuances to it. You now are a landlord, you are expected to maintain, and that word maintain has responsibility associated with it.
Well, I hope you guys got some value out of this. Next month, we'll be back here, and I'll be teaching solo about multifamily properties. And then, solo, right? Yes, okay. And then, we have a speaker. So, and then we're also in Manhattan Beach, we're doing it on multifamilies as well. We're having more of a panel discussion there versus the one here is going to be more like education, going over the numbers, going over how to analyze a multifamily and things like that. And I'll be going over examples and that kind of stuff. So feel free to join us at either one. Like I said, go to meetup.com and you'll find our events there. And feel free to network. Find the people in the room that you can do business with. So thank you guys very much, and feel free to get these guys information afterwards if you guys need some help. So back to you guys.